Um, so, wait, I'm looking at the agenda, trying to look at the agenda. Okay, so the meeting is called to order, and we'll start with, do we have a public comment? Any members of the public wishing to make a comment?
I could make a little comment.
Okay, you can make a little comment. Go ahead.
I am sure you all are aware, I am on this listserv for retirees. And man, there have been so many things brought up. And I just hope that this new whatever it is going to work, because people are not happy.
I know, believe we've been getting many emails, and some of them have come to me personally because
yes, because you're reachable and you get it. That's how people are sending it to you.
And so we'll be talking about it at our next meeting next Tuesday. And I would just say, and what I've said before, but maybe not so clearly, is that there is complete commitment from the board, from the administration, to honor the agreements that we have with our retirees. And the issue seems to be process, not a willingness to provide the coverage, either, having currently the Hartford provide the coverage, or the district filling any gaps. The commitment is absolutely there. It's just the process. I am very cautiously hopeful that the switch to Aetna may make things somewhat better, because it's a different kind of policy.
Right.
And in any case, Aetna or the Hartford, there are many people, me included, who are very, very committed to making the process work so that our people get what they are entitled to.
Are you on that list, Moira?
I'm not on that list, and I'll tell you, they don't want me on the list. I'll be honest.
I mean, it seems like it would make sense for you to.
It would seem so, but yeah.
All right.
I don't really.
I haven't had issues myself.
I have had never a single issue, but I have not had serious medical challenges. So, I feel very, very, very deeply sorry for people who have been, challenged by the system and trying to negotiate it when they're ill.
And the issue from just reading these millions of posts seems to be a lack of trust.
Yes.
So, that's problematic in itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, yes, it's true.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they don't want me on the listserv.
All right. Well, if there's anything I think you should know, I'll let you know.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Roberta. More to be discussed next week. Any other public comment? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from September 1st meeting. Pat and Nicole, you okay with them?
I'm okay with the minutes.
Yeah, I made a brief correction and sent it to Tricia today, so I'm good.
Okay, me too. So the minutes are approved. And so now we are going to get some information from our HR folks about reopening and staffing.
Thanks, Moira. And we wanted to keep this agenda pretty light because we knew the board meeting would likely cover some of our time here tonight. So we're going to try to stay true to the agenda and to the meeting time. And what do we have till 7:30?
Yes, well, well, I shouldn't speak for anyone. I mean, we're scheduled for 7:30. So.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So reopening and staffing, as you heard from the board meeting, I think things went really well. And that, again, has a lot to do with preparation and also just a team effort, especially in the final few weeks as people, teachers, staff, clerical, everyone pulled together and got the job done. So, as a point of reference, so to speak, we had about, I'm going to round the numbers. We have about 80 secondary teachers who are working remotely and about 55 elementary teachers working remotely. And so a lot of the staffing movements that happened in the final 3 weeks were trying to get folks, adults in the room, qualified adults in the room, in brick and mortar, so that students who had chosen to learn in person, even, and this is especially true at the high school, almost the elementary was taken care of by elementary teachers who were teaching virtually. But at the high school in particular, because of the difficulty around certification areas and being able to use teachers outside of certification areas, we needed to find adults to be in the classroom so that those students who were in brick and mortar had an adult in the room who would also be able to help them engage with the instructor who was virtual. So that took a great effort. Mary Grover helped, especially with aides and assistants. So I wanted to publicly thank her for helping with that task. And ultimately, we were able to get a lot of positions filled that way. There was some overflow, especially at the high school, where students were put into larger rooms, cafeteria, gymnasium, et cetera, and seated socially distant apart. But there could be an English section going on in one area of the cafeteria and a science section going on in another, and other students learning different topics in classes. But a number of us were at the high school. It went well. They seemed to be learning. There were no disruptions. So coverages, we're going to continue to try to get as many students out of those situations and into a dedicated classroom. And that work continues. Custodial was another area. I'm meeting with Paul Alexander tomorrow at 11, and we'll do a final push there. Thank you to Gladera, who's helped move some applications for custodial up to Paul's level. I think we have most of our custodial vacancies either covered or anticipated to be covered within the next week to 10 days. There are some internal maneuverings that have to happen before we finally understand exactly where the openings are, because people get to choose, if there's a vacancy at one school and you want to transfer there. So ultimately those transfers have to happen before the final domino falls and we actually know where the vacancy is.
Bob, could you just give me the number of elementary teachers teaching virtually again?
It's 50. The exact number as of this morning was 53.
Okay.
82 secondary, although on my way into this meeting, I saw on my desk there might be one more, so it might be 83 by the end of tonight, but 82 secondary.
Okay.
Bob, I saw that we are hiring for nurses. Are we hiring for nurses because we would like a surplus or because we're in a deficit at the moment?
We're hiring, I think, to cover a couple of the privates,
Yep.
schools. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yep. So we do have some substitute nurses, Nicole, that are available that we're trying to put in those spaces, but obviously need long-term hires for that. There's also a vacancy due to a retirement at the high school as well. So we have a nurse at the high school, but that school has 2 full-time nurses.
And on the subject of substitutes, so how are we handling, what's the plan for if teachers who are teaching in person or teaching virtually cannot teach because of whatever?
Yeah, in person is
Sure.
the same as it always has been.
Right.
Hop on to, yeah, the name just escaped me. Hop onto the online system, enter your absence, and it'll be filled by a sub, day-to-day sub. The virtual, they have to do an extra step and put the link to the classroom into the ASOP system so that the sub teacher knows when and how to access the students virtually.
Okay. And do we have enough substitutes willing to come into buildings?
Yes, and we one of the things we did in order to incentivize substitutes to work every day in a particular position. So if we know that, I'm just gonna throw something out of science at the high school, a science teacher at the high school is teaching virtually for the year.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we need to fill the in-classroom experience with an appropriate adult. We've incentivized substitute teachers who are willing to be that person for the entire year, that they would earn an additional stipend per day to do that. We've been actually trying to negotiate that more. You might remember that a few negotiations back to have building level substitutes. And, it was, we didn't push too hard for it. Who could have anticipated the need back then? But what we had hoped to do is have substitutes that are in the building so students get to know them as, not just substitute teachers, but they're there every single day. And what we learned primarily was that the substitute professional, professional need is that they liked the opportunity to move from building to building. And not actually be tied to one building. That was sort of an incentive for being a sub. And of course, being able to say, look, next Wednesday, I'm not going to take a job. I need to do something else. Right. So those 2 big flexibilities, we couldn't get to an agreement, but essentially what we've done, what the Ithaca Sub Association agreed to now is to actually pilot that for this year and see how that works out. But I always put a plug, I don't know how, we have 17 participants, so, and I'm one of them. So the other 16, anytime you can get someone to sign up for substitute work, we have work for them, always. And of course I've seen a couple as I've driven around, the little yard signs that we put out, they look like political signs, so. But they actually say something nice, which is we're hiring for a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
And shout out to Ladera for doing a great job getting that together so quickly and getting those materials out. Awesome. They look great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So do we have new teachers, new to the district, new to teaching, who are teaching virtually? And if so, how many?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I didn't calculate it in that way, Moira, but yeah. I will. I wasn't able to be in yesterday, so I will definitely calculate this a number of different ways, so that the data could be, you know, sifted through. That's a great question. I anecdotally, I mean, it's, you know, yeah, there were a few. I actually don't want to guess because in my head I don't have it set right now. But that's a great question. I'll get the answer for the group.
Well, of course, at the secondary level, anybody who's new is doing both, right? Or unless they have an accommodation. But
Correct.
other questions, folks?
Not for me at this time.
And
My computer's telling me I have an unstable internet connection, so I'm taking my picture off.
so, Bob, how many new teachers did we hire for this year?
Gladira, you were working on that. Did you have a final number or a close tally on that? I'm sorry for catching you cold.
Okay, give me 3 minutes.
While Gladira is doing that, I'll ask another question. Did we have any late retirements?
Yeah, we had, I think 2 or 3 that came fairly late.
Okay.
And actually, instead of having them retire mid-year, we agreed to waive the notification requirement.
Uh-huh.
We wanted to know more. We wanted to know sooner rather than mid-year.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm thinking, from my quick memory, I'm thinking we hired around 30, but Gladira, does that seem about right to you?
35.
Okay.
And is that typical?
It's, I mean, it's been trending down for a few years now. That's on the lighter side, yeah.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
And do you know how many of those are people of color?
Yeah, Gladira gave us that information last meeting, right?
We'll post it again, though.
Yeah, I have it somewhere in my notes, but
There are 4 new teachers of color.
okay. So what about questions for future meetings?
I'd be interested to hear from Gladira on any progress with Dr. Beliza Gonzalez in terms of the analysis that she's supposed to do moving forward, looking at our HR process.
Yeah, so we were scheduled to meet last week, and with her classes starting and just things with the reopening, we haven't met. But what the next step was to continue the trainings. So she held one training that was with administrators. And then we were gonna take that a little further and actually look at the like the wordings of our job announcements, and dive a little deeper into that. So we do have a meeting scheduled for next week. It was just with her schedule and my schedule, we have not had that yet.
I also offer, maybe not for next meeting, but certainly in a soon future meeting, is that we focus a little bit of attention more so than we have in the past years on retention, especially
Right. Yeah.
retention of teachers of color and what that looks like. Ladir is starting to really ramp that up and has a number of ideas that I think this group in particular can help support and also, you know, give your thoughts on as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's very important, and I'm interested to dig into
So
that.
we'll try to have some data by
Mhm.
next meeting of maybe a 5-year look, maybe, yeah, at least a 5-year look back of faculty of color. Maybe we'll start there. How many we hired, how long they've stayed, have they stayed? And if we know some of them, you know, we know their stories, we remember their stories. So if they didn't stay, why?
Yeah.
Just
that
to get
sounds-
some data.
Yes. Sounds good.
Moira, if you want me to, I know the next item on the agenda is a tenure recommendation.
Right.
What we just wanted to get that in the hands of the HR committee
Right.
tonight. It is an end of, I got to get my month straight. It's the end of November
Right.
tenure for this particular. He was a late hire when we hired him.
Right.
And so we'll have a meeting on November 3rd, or must be November 3rd. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Election day. So vote before the meeting and vote after the meeting, but vote vote whenever. And then we'll have our meeting. And, you know, between now and then, if you have any questions on the tenure recommendation, Keith stands, you know, obviously ready to answer via email, whatever, but then he can also come on November 3rd and give the usual presentation if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, I looked at it. I don't see any issues with it at all.
Yeah, if you need them, great. If not, it's up to the committee.
Right.
I also looked at the file and it looks extremely strong.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question since I'm not involved in that at all? How many people, what percentage of people don't get tenure when you review the recommendations? Or
Robert, this is sort of going from memory, and I haven't looked at anything in particular for a while, but I can tell you that it was a larger percentage a number of years ago, but
It didn't.
That did not. Yeah, it was a larger percentage that did not. And I think because of the work of the committee and the various people, including yourself, that's been on the committee, the hiring has slowly gotten better, especially in terms of cultural responsiveness, right? And so I think the number, I'd like to be positive. The number of people get tenure now is higher than it was a few years ago.
So is cultural responsiveness one of the criteria for?
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yay!
yeah, and a number of years ago, the board instituted the policy. Well, it's not written policy, but the practice that each year the principals come before the committee, and not only do they talk about people who are getting tenure, but then they talk about the teachers who are in their first year, second year, third year. So it's a progression. It's really, you know, the board is not surprised at the end of the time by people who are like, oh, hey, let us introduce you to this person you're going to give tenure to next week.
Right.
Yeah. Can I add something to that? So this came about probably, 5 years or so ago, when I came on the board, and I was on HR, and, I shared the feeling that other members of the board felt that we were getting tenure recommendations and we'd never heard of the person. And it felt, frankly, absurd for us to be approving them or at that stage of the game, asking questions about it.
Right.
So we started the process of, and this is back when Chris was chair, some of the principals, sometimes their tenure recommendations said very, very little. So the committee started sending them back and saying there needs to be more. We now, using the Danielson framework, the tenure recommendations are very, very, very lengthy and very specific at different areas, including cultural responsiveness is extremely
Well, that's
important.
good to hear. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah. And then the process that Bob described, we're catching issues earlier, and either the people are getting, real help to improve, or they move on before it's their tenure year,
Right.
which it feels a lot better.
Yeah.
And it's a lot, it feels a lot better to us, and it's also better for the people
Right.
that, to, get the impression that, okay, well, maybe, instead of being denied tenure, I can go start looking for a job on my own terms elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's really
Yeah, I would just add that
wonderful to hear.
it's a process that we all feel better about. Of course, it now takes 4 years rather than 3 for a newly hired teacher to become tenured. That's an extra year of observation. And I don't think any of us want to be put in the position of giving a person little guidance and false expectations for 4 years and then pulling the rug out from under them at a critical moment. So we really, teachers progress year by year, and making sure if there are issues about instruction or cultural competence or, classroom management or content knowledge, that they are given support to improve. And, if they do, that's wonderful. And as Bob says, if they don't, then they may be a better fit elsewhere.
Right.
And then if it gets to the point of tenure, and we still have doubts, there is the procedure of a jewel for an additional year of improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also important to remember too that the board at any time along that timeline, including in the first year, can end, not, we like to put a nice parlance onto it, not invite the teacher back for another year.
Right.
So, and then the teacher has to make some decisions on what to do. But at any time along those timelines, there's there's no contractual obligation. In fact, a contractual obligation which diminishes that board right would not be held viable by the courts. So we have unfettered right at any time to make changes.
Well, that's all very encouraging.
Yeah.
And
I just would add that I think that the principals now know that they really have to be thoughtful before they come to talk to us about people.
right.
And I've been really, really impressed with the principals going through this process. We have a whole set of questions we ask them about their people. And so, they need to be prepared to say, this is an area for improvement, and this is the support that the teacher is being given.
And they have to understand cultural responsiveness in order to evaluate whether it's there or not.
Yeah.
Which I think has not always been the case.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, well, it's 7:29. Anything else, anybody? All right.
I'm good.
I'm good. Nicole, you good? As Rob likes to say,
Yes, I'm good. This is my Zoom meeting of the day, so I'm just kind of Zoom,
which number is it up?
my 8th meeting of the day.
Oh my goodness. Go have a glass of wine.
I'm good.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody,
Thanks,
and
thanks everyone.
see you next week.
Okay, see everyone next week.
Good night.
Good night, Gladera.